Sup, y'all? Welcome to Original Gamers Cast. I'm your host, Patrick Ryan, and I'm joined today by Nolan Brown.
Hey there.
And Joel Watt.
Hello, friends.
So, how you guys been doing this week?
Busy. Very, very busy.
Is it a good busy or bad?
I mean, it's mostly been schoolwork, and then my D&D group decided we wanted to do something special because one of my friends is going... He actually has to go somewhere for school this next semester, so he's not going to be around. So we're like, okay, we're going to have one last week of special stuff, and yeah.
Yeah.
That was the other part, so that's also why I didn't get to play as much.
Yeah.
Cough.
Well, I've always wanted to play D&D, but I've never had like a group of friends local who were into it. So I understand the general concept of how it works, but I've never actually played.
Yeah, that's pretty much me growing up. It was more like a friend from work's like was bugging me for a year. He's like, "Hey, we just started a new thing that's not on this day that you do stuff. Would you like to come join?" It's like, sure. So
Nice.
yeah.
What about you, Joel?
I've been like working on a day, off a day, which is weird because I usually work 5 days straight. And
Yeah.
I write my own hours, so I don't know.
Well, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it is nice, but like at the same time, I have to be there when I need to be there. So sometimes I'm there 6 days a week, and it's awful.
Good grief.
That's the perils of working at a church.
Yeah. No kidding.
But I actually stayed super late on Wednesday so I could have 3 days off, and then I totally just wasted yesterday. And then I was up all night and had to take a nap so I could be awake for this. But I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm excited for later today, and yeah.
Sweet.
Cool.
Yeah, and my week's mostly just been work, and more work. I work overnights at a TV station, and I'm sure there's probably something in my employee handbook about talking about them specifically in the media, so I'm not going to say where or anything like that, just in case. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I work overnight, and so that usually means when I come home at 7 o'clock in the morning, I go straight to bed. So that's what I was doing right before I came on here to record this. I do want to mention briefly, for the very first episode of this, I did the recording, and will have done the editing. I haven't edited it yet, but this week we brought on a fellow Geeks Under Grace community member, LJ Lowry. He's got his mic muted, but he's here, and he has filled in for me, recording the other podcasts that I work on, and he did such an awesome job that I was like, hey, I should ask him to do this so that I don't have to do it. And he got super excited and gave me $20. That's not true.
Wow.
He did get excited, but not so much that he gave me money. So. All right. So anyway, we're this week we are talking about Banjo-Kazooie, which I will admit, until the Xbox 360 version for Xbox Live Arcade, I never actually owned, even though I have an N64 and I love these types of games. So I've played it some. And when I say some, that probably makes it sound like I've played it a lot less than I actually have. But I haven't beat it. So I'm familiar with how the game works and the characters, and of course being a big fan of Rare's games like Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo and a bunch of their other work. I'm familiar with a lot of the concepts of the game, but Joel here is the resident Banjo-Kazooie guru.
I probably beat this game 9 times.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dang.
I love this game.
Yeah. So I looking here in the notes. So I mentioned it's developed by Rare, which is a British developer, and for the time, like especially back in the Super Nintendo and the NES, it's very um, odd how much access Rare got to Nintendo's consoles because Nintendo was a Japanese company and they're very rooted in their Japanese ways. So it was not very common for them to open up like they did to Rare to outside developers. But thank goodness they did because Rare went on to make, in
A
my
lot of
opinion,
great
some
games.
of Nintendo's best games.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Mm. So the game for the N64 was published by Nintendo, and then later when it came out for Xbox Live Arcade, it was published by Microsoft Game Studios, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into how that came about later in the show. And now we're going to get into a bunch, well, I say a bunch, two names that I'm not familiar with. It's designed by a gentleman named Greg, is that Males or
Yeah,
Malus? Okay.
Males,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know.
Greg,
That
if you're
guy.
listening, and that's not going to happen.
I'm gonna say males.
Just no, males sounds good. And what I was surprised by, and I guess just from my ignorance, I know David Weiss is the big composer with Rare that I know, and so when I saw that this is composed by a guy named Grant Kirkhope, I don't know that name.
Oh, you don't know Grant Kirkhope?
No, I do
Yeah.
not. So
Oh
this is
man,
Grant's
beyond me.
he's in a couple of the other things. I mean, of course, I can't remember right now, but
he,
he
he's
did
like
yeah.
he's like the internet's favorite video game composer, right behind the big ones. Like
Yeah.
he loves doing indie games. I know he's actually become good friends with a lot of YouTubers, and Twitch
Yeah.
uh, streamers, because he's so active on the internet.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a great guy. I love Grant Kirkhope. I follow him on Twitter. He's really funny. Like,
So it's funny you mentioned that because I remember first time I like heard of him really was an episode of Game Grumps. They had him on as like a guest, like the
yeah, like
guest
he's
Grumps.
friends
Yeah.
with JonTron.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yes.
cool.
and
Yeah.
Gerard Khalil the completionist, and like all these other guys.
Yeah.
He's been on GDQs and like other marathon streams.
Mhm.
Sorry, I'm gushing about Grant Kirkhope.
Oh, it sounds like I'm gonna have to look this guy up. I love video game music. As I've gotten older and am slowly morphing into a grumpy curmudgeon, I found that I like my music lyricless. So I listen to a lot of movie scores and video game scores because after hearing about the dance floor and people's booties for so long, I just can't take it anymore. So,
Yes.
What music did you used to listen to?
well, growing up Christian, I spent most of my the '90s listening to like the Newsboys and DC Talk and Audio Adrenaline, Michael W. Smith, Petra, stuff like that. But they don't even write Christian music that good anymore. Now you turn on, pick your favorite Christian radio station, which, by the way, is probably some nationally broadcast station. It's not even local anymore.
Yeah.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah, which
My
that
local one went
mhm,
out. So
right. And so, but then you'll hear like I almost said like God of Wonders, which that song's probably 20 years old, but
Oh
yeah,
man.
I think it
so
is.
so that's how long it's
Now you
been
made me
since I've
curious.
regularly listened to Christian music. It's just you hear the same thing over and over again, and I guess like because it's by a different artist, they're like, "Oh no, it's a different song." No, it's not. So then when I got older and moved out and kind of had more control over what I was allowed to listen to, I ventured into listening to secular music, and I found some that I like. I like Linkin Park. I like Kelly Clarkson and Coldplay to a certain extent, but most of it is just it's it's the same thing over and over and over again, and sometimes it's kind of gross. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
yeah, so I started listening to more video game soundtracks. I love Koji Kondo,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh,
Nobuo
Kondo.
Uematsu, who I
Yes.
have all three of his Black Mages albums. Which,
Oh
for those of
really?
you who don't know, those are metal versions of a lot of the songs that he wrote,
Yeah.
which
Like his
usually
actual
means
band
yeah,
too.
he plays in it. I think he plays keys
I think so.
He
for the
plays
band.
guitar too.
Does
I've
he?
seen him.
Does he?
Yeah.
That
Okay.
that doesn't surprise me. The man is super talented. So it's mostly Final Fantasy music. I think on one of the albums there's like a random song from another game that he wrote for, but I don't
Kingdom
know
Hearts.
which. But I don't know. But
No, I mean,
I know
'cause-
he's not hugely active at Square. Actually, he might not be with Square at all anymore. But anyway, we went off on a tangent. So you talking about Banjo
okay.
Kazooie?
Yeah.
um,
Yes.
Later.
Start talking about video game music.
yes.
Uh,
So maybe we'll do an entire episode that's just video game music. I could gush about that all day. Okay. Anyway, so the game initially came out for the N64 in North America on June 29th, 1998. Guys,
oh,
this game is it's not as old as Zelda from last week, but
nope.
it's still
I
pretty
mean, to
old.
be fair, not many things are.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
And then it came out in Europe on July 17th of the same year. I strangely could not find a Japanese release date, but I know it came out in Japan. I just don't know when. But I would assume probably the same year at the very least, and if not, very close by.
Yeah.
And then it got a worldwide release on Xbox Live Arcade, December 3rd, 2008. And then again for the Rare Replay collection on Xbox One. That was on August 4th, just last year, 2015. And if you're interested in playing this game, chances are Rare Replay would be the way that you would do that. Although you, of course, can still get it a la carte through Xbox Live Arcade, thanks to Microsoft's backwards compatibility. In fact, if you play Rare Replay, most of the games that are on that were already released for Xbox 360, you're literally just playing the 360 version. It's not some new. And I discovered that when the backwards compatibility came out for the Xbox One dashboard preview program members, because I was in that. I might still be in it. I don't know. I haven't looked in a while. But when Rare Replay came out, I didn't get it right away, but I had Perfect Dark from
Oh, that's right. I
from the
remember.
360.
I tried to
So
do that.
yeah, so I got some community members and we tried it out, and people with Rare Replay were able to play Perfect Dark with me while
No
I was on
way.
my Xbox 360.
Yeah.
So that was
That's pretty
pretty
cool.
tight. And I assumed that the other, although I guess Perfect Dark Zero was multiplayer. I don't know what other 360 games, because I like Banjo Kazooie is not multiplayer, and
Not even.
right, maybe Viva
I think
Pinata. I'm
Battletoads.
not. Oh yeah,
Banjo
Battletoads
Tooie
one
is
was.
So
multiplayer.
Banjo Tooie is
Yeah,
okay.
but
Really?
not Banjo
The
Kazooie. No.
sequel.
Yeah, there's been 3 sequels. There was Banjo Tooie, Banjo Kazooie, Grunty's Revenge, and Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Nuts and Bolts was on the 360, and it's considered the worst banjo game ever. It's not even a Banjo Kazooie game.
Yeah,
We kind of went over that earlier before we started.
that's
Really?
when
Yeah.
Rare went through there. Okay, we got bought by Microsoft. Now let's make junk, I guess. I don't
Yes,
know.
let's ruin all of our old franchises.
Um, but yeah, that's what I guess most people would blame that on Microsoft, but I don't know how these things in the video game industry work. I know that Microsoft's not stupid, so for some reason they thought that whatever they had Rare doing was a good idea, and it just wasn't. So
It wasn't what the fans wanted.
that
I've heard a lot of people say it's not a bad game. It's not a good Banjo-Kazooie game.
That's
That's probably accurate.
how a lot of people describe Star Fox Adventures, which
Yeah.
is another
Yes.
rare
Oh,
game.
I like
You know
Star
what?
Fox
Yeah. So did
Yeah,
I. That was cool.
I've actually not played it because I heard it was so bad. So I
No,
just
it's
like,
not.
okay,
Just don't think of it as a Star Fox game. I don't.
yeah,
I bought it because it had Star Fox on the title, and
mhm,
then I started playing it. I was like, "This isn't Star Fox," but I
yeah.
like it.
Was
Anyway,
our sound guy saying that he agrees that
yes,
it's like a Zelda game?
it's like
Oh,
a Zelda game.
okay,
Pretty
Exactly.
much.
yeah. Oh, well, I could see how someone would be disappointed. Like, all right, I'm gonna fly through space and blow things up. What is this?
You're running
Yeah,
around on the
exactly.
ground with this
Yeah.
pole that shoots fire. It's like,
So
what?
I for the longest time I felt that way about Super Mario Sunshine. I was like,
Uh,
this game is a great Mario, a great game. I'm just not convinced that it's a great Mario game.
Oh,
Uh, but now I think if I went back and played it, and I'm a more mature gamer and have a better critical eye, I might change my mind because there's a lot of really great Mario features in that I think just kind of get covered up by the goofy water pack that he carries around. But
yeah.
um,
Anyway, back to Banjo.
yes, back to Banjo-Kazooie. So
sorry.
this is just normal for Geeks Under Grace people. We start on
Totally
one
derailing.
subject and just move on to other things. So
Shows a picture of the
I still have my
SOS
N64
thread.
cartridge of Banjo Kazooie. I don't have it with me, but oh no, that's Super Mario World. Darn it! Sorry,
Once again,
I have a drawer full of random stuff. Like the game I have in my N64 right now is Rogue Squadron. So I don't know what I did with my cartridge, but
yeah.
I know I have it. I let's played it for Geeks Under Grace Gaming. Yeah,
Mhm.
Banjo Kazooie is great.
yes.
Yeah. It's so you know, segueing into like the presentation and stuff. This game is very. I mean, I always thought like for an N64 game, it was pretty detailed in like
Mm-hmm.
how it looked. Like especially when you compare it to other similar games, like especially Super Mario 64, which is very flat looking.
Oh my gosh.
There's like zero texture in that
Yeah.
game at all, and
Watching
It didn't age well.
right.
No, it didn't. Like I was watching the Game Grumps play that. They're like, this looks horrible. This hurts to watch.
Right.
Why is everyone like this? And it's like, but you remember it was the, it's basically what came out for the N64 at that time.
Yeah, it was a launch title. It was almost like a tech demo that was fully fleshed out.
Pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. So Banjo Kazooie looks incredible.
Yeah.
Standing next to that, and even what's the other like Ocarina of Time? Of course, has significantly more detail to it than Super Mario 64, but
Yeah.
Banjo Kazooie still, to me, it's a lot busier and there's more going on, and the
Yeah.
textures are a little bit more detailed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I could read this to you from Wikipedia, it says Banjo Kazooie employs an advanced technique to render its graphics. The characters were created with minimal amounts of texturing. Ah, surprise!
Ah,
Give them a sharp and clean look. While the backgrounds use very large textures to split into 64 by 64 pieces, which is the largest texture size that an N64 could render. And it caused memory issues, and they created a way to reshuffle things, and it's which was not done at the time. It's a miracle programming, and so that's why it has aged well, is because they put a lot of effort into making it look good.
mm-hmm.
Not realistic, obviously, but
Right.
just looks good.
Yeah, and Rare is traditionally, at least while they were with Nintendo, very good about kind of really getting into the hardware that they're developing for and pushing it to. It's like Donkey Kong Country for
was
the
gonna
Super
say that.
Nintendo.
Yeah.
Still today,
Looks pretty.
it's
great.
amazing how great that game looks.
Yeah.
So I was impressed when it came out. Apparently not impressed enough to go buy it, but yeah, it's a very, very pretty looking game, as Rare games at least of the Nintendo era. I don't want to talk much about Rare on Microsoft because it just makes me sad.
Yeah.
Um, but we could probably maybe there'll be a little note for me later. This can get edited out if it doesn't make any sense, LJ. But maybe occasionally we do episodes where we just talk about different developers who have been around for a while, because Rare has quite
There's
the
one of those.
history that
Yeah.
deserves to be celebrated.
Yeah.
Um,
If I could just say my little history with Rare.
Yeah.
My parents were going through a divorce during the SNES era, so I didn't get a lot of video games at that time. So I never played Donkey Kong Country.
Mhm.
I didn't know about Rare's history with Nintendo until the N64. And I think the first game of theirs I played was Diddy Kong Racing. I was like, this game is
Yes.
awesome.
Mhm.
And then I'm reading about Banjo in that game, and I'm going, wait, he's gonna be in another game? I want that game.
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I got it, and yeah, I've loved it ever since. The last 18 years.
hmm I
Gosh.
I loved Diddy Kong Racing, and
That was great.
I'm really disappointed that not, because all of those characters that were in that, I think at one point were supposed to be in their own games.
Yeah, it
And
was supposed to be like
Pretty
a launch pad.
much.
yeah, and then like Timba never, as far as I know, never came out for anything.
Conker's game
Conker
got
did.
totally remade into an adult game.
Yeah, it did.
Like,
Wait, his voice changed too. Like I
yeah.
didn't realize at
Yeah.
the time, but it's like afterwards, I'm like, someone pointed out, I'm like, oh yeah, because in Diddy Kong, he's just like he's got that high squeaky kind
Yeah,
of.
he sounds like a little kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in Bad Fur Day, he sounds almost like an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or maybe like a little kid who's been smoking since the day he was born.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
so
Wakes up from a hangover. Oh, bad.
oh goodness. So the musical score. This I was telling the guys before we started recording that the guy who recorded or composed this, I'm not familiar with him, or at least I wasn't until very recently, because before I saw this name, David Wise, he's the Rare guy. He did all the music for Donkey Kong Country and really a lot what I just assumed was all of Rare's great games. And then I come across this name, Grant Kirkhope, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then Joel and Nolan proceeded to school me, so I will now let them school you on who this gentleman is. So
I thought we just talked about this.
did we? Oh wait, did we were we recording
I think we did
already?
a little bit.
Maybe
a little bit. I mean, you can't when you were going over the like who's who in this.
That's right.
kind
We
of
were recording. Well, okay.
bit,
So
but I mean,
I'm a bad host.
it's all right.
um.
LJ can just move stuff around. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we pay him the big bucks. And
Of course.
by pay him, I mean he gets to do this because he's a swell guy.
Yeah.
More detail could be fine.
That's right. But yeah.
I mean-
So
One cool thing that I know that Grant did, and at least Banjo, I'm pretty sure he did in all the games that he did. But like for the musical scores, he made it kind of fade in and fade out very smoothly. Kind of like I can't think of any other. That's the sad part. I'm like, I know he's done several. Kind of like in Ocarina of Time, if you're just going somewhere, it'll just like fade into the next song pretty smoothly.
yeah.
So that was one thing that I would at the time it's just like, oh, okay, whatever, but looking back it's like, hey, that was really cool that when they do that, especially for the time. It was like, hey, they're doing a cool thing. It's not just like, okay, next thing, just violently new song.
Right.
So, a little more information on Grant Kirkhope. Apparently, his first video game he did was Killer Instinct 2 or Killer Instinct Gold.
Okay.
He did Donkey Kong Country Land 2, which was on the Game Boy. He did GoldenEye 007, obviously Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, Star Fox Adventures, Viva Pinata, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, Kingdoms of Amalur.
Oh, really?
I've heard
Yeah,
of that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ninja Gaiden Z, um,
Huh.
Civilization Beyond Earth, and of course the upcoming
Ukulele.
Ukulele.
That's right. Yeah.
And A Hat in Time, both these spiritual successors to the 3D platformers of the N64.
I forgot about A Hat in Time. I remember when it started getting buzz,
Yeah,
hearing
I
about
remember
it and
the
being like, I need to
alpha
play
build,
this.
and like
A
people
Hat in
were like
Time? Which
running
one is that?
around, and there's like no voices and no animations, but like
Mhm.
it still looked amazing, and I was like, I want to get this game.
It was a Kickstarter game, right?
Yeah,
And I remember the lead character kind of reminded me a little bit about what's that 3DS Professor Layton.
oh
He
yeah,
kind of looks like him.
she.
Two completely different games, um, obviously, but
So the main character in A Hat in Time, she's called Hat Kid, and yeah, she wears the same like purple hat as Professor Layton,
mhm.
and that's like her thing is you go around and you collect hats, and but yeah, she looks like a young female version of Professor Layton.
Yeah.
Uh, But back to Kirkhope, he did the voice of Mumbo Jumbo in Banjo Kazooie, and Bottles and
Mhm.
Jam Jars in the sequel, and the Jinjos, and
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he's done vocals on lots of other things too. But that's just a little blurb I see here on Wikipedia.
Mhm. It says here that he's 53. Man.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. It's weird to the video game industry is, I guess it's a good 30 years old, but it's since there's a lot of young blood in that industry. It's always cool to me to hear that someone's been around for a while and is getting older, and um, not that you're old, Grant, just
Old
but
enough to be my dad. That's
right,
all.
but usually when you hear about um, people who have been around a while in the video game industry and they're getting up there in age, chances are they work for Nintendo
I was
or
gonna say.
maybe Capcom or something like that.
Or
Um,
like they used to work for Atari. Or
yeah.
yeah, like those are the oldest video game guys I can think of. Would be the
Hmm.
dudes from Atari, and most of them don't even make video games anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
They just they either have regular jobs now or they're sitting on some giant pile of cash that
Yeah.
they managed to score. But so kind of comparing what I can remember of the score in this game to David Wise's stuff, it seems like this guy's music is probably a little bit more, maybe the word I'm looking for is whimsical, very
Mm.
Walt Disney cartoon like, whereas stuff from Donkey Kong Country is it sounds a little bit more serious, a little more full. And that's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just these are how they're different from
Yeah.
each other. Because I know, like, I couldn't see myself just sitting around listening to the soundtrack to Banjo Kazooie because it's, again, not that I don't like it, but um, I would need the game running, to put it with the silliness that's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
I think to really get behind it, but uh, I don't know.
I
That's
probably
just
agree
me.
with that. I mean, it's definitely has more of a kind of cartoon. I mean, like that sounds weird to say, but yeah, it kind of does have more of a cartoony sound to it.
Mhm.
But it fits well with the game. You know.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a lot of trombones and
Yeah.
well,
Uh huh.
banjos and kazoos.
Yes. I love
Hmm.
kazoos. No, is that what that means? No, just
Yeah,
Oh.
Rare really hit the nail on the head there. Like,
like it took me a long time to realize that like the fanfares for when you collect jiggies,
mhm.
like they're led by banjos and kazoos. Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh, duh. Like it was probably when I was Let's playing for Geeks Under Grace. I was like, oh, it's okay, that's what's going on.
Right.
And like, Banjo's sister, the whole like point of the game is you're trying to rescue his sister, and her name is Tootie, and she toots on a horn. Like,
Yeah.
Oh.
like yeah, and uh, all these musical things going on, and I'm just like totally over my head. As a young teenager, it was anyway.
Yeah. So speaking of the story, so a witch kidnaps Banjo's sister. What'd you say her name was again?
Her name is
Tootie.
Tootie.
Tootie, and that's different from Tooie from the sequel, right? They're not
Yes,
the-
she's
Yeah.
not even in Tooie except as an Easter egg.
Okay. So she gets kidnapped because the witch wants to look beautiful.
Yep.
And
Very
decided
Snow
that
White-esque.
this weird bear thing with blonde hair was the key to unlocking her beauty. So she kidnaps, and the witch's name is like Grun something,
Gruntilda.
Gruntilda,
Yeah.
and uses her somehow to become this game's version of beautiful, and then 2D becomes this hideous looking, grotesque monster thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid, I was weirded out by the game over screen. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Grunty
was-
shouldn't look like that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing that. I'm like, she's kind of
She has very
Uh,
exaggerated features, right?
She
does.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, and actually, this is a thing that Rare did a lot in the N64 era. Was like they made a lot of their female characters very risque.
mhm.
And I mean, you look at Candy Kong and
Right.
and characters
yeah,
in
huh.
Banjo Tooie like Humba Wumba and what was the bee's name? Honey Bee, probably. I'm not very creative. But yeah, like just exaggerated features is the best way to put
Right,
it.
and then especially Conquer.
Oh
Um,
man!
Oh my gosh.
Let's not talk about Conquer. That game
flower.
makes me upset. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
If you're listening and you're older than 18 and you're really that curious, go play Conquer. It's interesting.
There are a lot of fun parts to it, but it's
But then when you're done,
Very
call
much
your
an
mother and tell her that you love her, and because you'll need
Get
to
on your knees to the Lord and ask for forgiveness for wallowing in filth for the last 12 hours.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Anyway, so talking about outside influences for this game, obviously, it is what is kind of now called a collectathon.
Yes.
Which it's kind of like the guys at Rare played Super Mario 64 and said, "Hey, let's cram 900 times that much content into one game."
Well, that's
Yeah.
technically Donkey Kong 64, but
yeah.
Fair
Oh
enough.
my
Banjo
gosh.
Kazooie just has a lot more going on than Super Mario 64, but not that much. Maybe twice as much.
Right. I remember sitting down to play Donkey Kong 64 and just thinking, I don't have time for this.
Yeah. Right?
Like I didn't realize that I sat down to play the 3D platformer equivalent to Final Fantasy VI. I just don't have this kind of time.
Wow.
It actually,
Wow.
as far as I know, it has going off on a tangent. Donkey Kong 64 has the Guinness Book of World Records,
Yeah.
like most items to collect in a game.
And that's crazy now, considering we live in a world where The Witcher 3 is a thing,
Yeah.
and Skyrim is a thing, and Fallout 4 is a thing.
Yeah.
And this N64 game that was so big, it required the little expansion pack. It did
the
require
expansion
that,
pack.
right? I think
Yes,
so.
it did.
Yeah.
It came packed in with it because there was a memory error that couldn't be solved without it.
Right. And Rare was like, well, we could make the game smaller, or we could just include this little
Well, no, it
doohickey.
wasn't that. There was a memory error. They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was wrong, and they're like, well, it works with more RAM, so let's just give it more RAM.
There you go. They probably went to some guy and was like, "Hey, find this error," and he goes, "Do you know how many lines of code there are in this game?" No, I'm not doing that.
There's 5 million lines of code. I'm not doing this.
Anyway, so yeah, Banjo Kazooie obviously influenced a lot by Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
I had
And-
heard at one point that it was built on the Super Mario 64 engine. Like it was a
I heard that too.
I could see that.
it was a ROM
Yeah.
hack basically.
Yeah,
Except arguably better
Yeah.
in
Right.
a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But I actually played Banjo Kazooie long before I played Super Mario 64.
Mhm.
Because obviously the N64 didn't come with a pack-in game like the previous Nintendo consoles,
Right.
and so I had to go out and spend my own Christmas money on a game, and I chose Cruisin' USA, which was a wise investment.
Obviously.
And my wonderful 12-year-old mind. Wait,
Mhm.
it's 1996, so I just turned 13 actually.
Yeah.
My birthday's Christmas, for those who don't know. And so yeah, then what was it? Banjo Kazooie, or no, I already told this story. The Diddy Kong Racing comes out, and then Banjo Kazooie comes out.
Mhm.
And I never had Super Mario 64 in its initial run. A friend of mine had it, and he played it, and I was like, I kind of like Banjo better. Like even as a young teen, I was like, I like Banjo better.
I also, when I got my N64, I bought Super Mario 64 and Cruisin' USA. And then for Christmas, someone got me, probably my grandmother, because my parents wouldn't buy me video games. Thanks, Mom. I'm just kidding. But my grandmother
Not bitter.
got that Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey.
Oh wow!
Oh,
That was
man.
and that was kind of like the spiritual successor to NFL Blitz and all those sports games that have no rules to them. But
NFL Blitz was fun.
yeah, it was. So but yeah, so that's my. And then I have had and still have a lot of my N64 games. I'm not real sure why Banjo Kazooie never made it into the list. So, and that actually would be, we're kind of already talking about it, but we can elaborate more on how this game has impacted our own lives, the video game industry as a whole. I don't know that this game's had a huge impact, at least not on American culture. At least not like Zelda did, or Super Mario Brothers or any of those things. But yeah, so like I said, I didn't own it until the 360 port on Xbox Live Arcade came out, and that's Microsoft getting access to Rare's past library is arguably the best thing to come from that purchase of the company, because goodness knows nothing that they've made since then. Actually, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but Perfect Dark Zero was almost hilariously bad. Like Mystery Science Theater movie, kind of bad.
Wow.
It's just
Really?
oh yeah, like, well, and not even because like the plot or anything was ridiculous. The plot was fine. It was just very poorly programmed. You would kill somebody, and their body would bounce around the environment. Like,
oh man,
yeah, and like you could. So it boasted, I think 64. I'll try and keep this brief. It boasted 64 player online, which was for back then. Like nowadays, you get Battlefield is doing that.
like 80.
Yeah, but so that was huge, and I remember hopping online, and you're lining someone up in like a sniper or some kind of rifle, and you get them down the sights, and you fire, and some guy's physics-less body floats in front of you right as you squeeze the trigger and blows your shot, and so like, as long as you didn't get aggravated about that, it was kind of funny watching this limp body float through the air and basically mess up everything that you're trying to do.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
He's not bound by gravity, but he still has mass. Because
Yes.
it ruins your shot.
Right,
Yes.
How does that?
because it would absorb your bullet, and you'd be like, well, there goes that.
Cool.
So, but yeah, so Microsoft got a hold of all those old games and started slowly bringing them to Xbox Live Arcade. And so that was the first time I owned it. I had a friend who had it for N64, and so I'd go over there and watch him play it, or sometimes I played it myself. But it's very, very similar in feel and control to Super Mario 64. With, of course, the I guess the biggest difference being that Kazooie could come out of the backpack and you'd kind of float or
Yeah,
something.
Banjo
Yeah.
had a partner in crime, so to
Mhm.
speak, because they would team up and do these moves together. My biggest observation of the difference. Wow, that's not at all what I'm trying to say. Words, how do they work?
Mhm.
For me, the biggest difference is the camera control between Mario 64 and Banjo Kazooie. The Banjo Kazooie has much better camera control.
Yeah.
As far as like going into first person mode and looking around and being able to rotate the camera around and zoom it in and out, like just much better. What am I trying to say? Super Mario 64 takes away the camera control a lot
Yeah.
and is trying to emulate the side-scrolling feel of the other Super Mario games.
Hmm.
And it just doesn't work in a 3D environment, and
Right.
Rare realized that, so they're like, let's just give the player control of the camera. It makes more sense.
Hmm.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a joke and then never mind. Continue.
Okay,
I was gonna say something that it instantly left my head.
Yeah. Oh, don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah.
You're like, man, I'm hilarious until I forget what I was going to say.
Pretty much.
Oh.
I mean,
I'm the funniest person in my head.
Yeah. I about the camera. One thing about Nintendo's ability to program a camera is, and yeah, sometimes the camera in Super Mario 64 is frustrating because the camera gets into it. It's like, no, this is where I need to be for your best angle, and you're just going to live with that. But a lot of times it was right. It would float out to wherever it was that Nintendo thought that it needed to be, and you're like, no, actually, this works. Occasionally, it was wrong, and you'd want to change it, and it would be like, no, I'm not moving. This is the great Shigeru Miyamoto decided that this is where I need to be, and you just need to get used to this fact.
Miyamoto.
Right?
You-
Because
you
I
will
remember
accept
when Mario Galaxy came out, and there's other than flipping the camera like directly behind you, there is no way to control the camera in that
Nope.
game. But surprisingly, I didn't find myself wanting to change it all that much because it just seemed to be where it needed to be. I'd say like 95% of the time.
Yeah,
pretty much. I
Um,
mean, yeah, I feel like you couldn't move it as much, but the camera was better
Yeah.
still. So
yeah. I actually played Sunshine after Galaxy, and you have like total control in Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
Of the camera, just like in Wind Waker, and yeah, in Galaxy, like again, the camera's always where it needs to be. So
Yeah.
Nintendo knows what they're doing these days when it comes to camera control. They just didn't with Mario 64. and again, it was a launch title. It was their first foray into 3D. Like nobody had ever done this before. So
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
fault them at all.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just,
yeah, not even.
Yeah.
it's just somebody came along and did it better. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
No, absolutely. And it's I'll have to, because my only experience with the camera in Banjo-Kazooie is obviously with the right analog stick on a 360. I guess not my only experience, but the only experience I can remember. So I remember for those of you listening, if you recall, the N64 controller just had those buttons. And so you'd hit it and the camera would move a predetermined amount.
Yeah, it would move like 45 degrees at a time.
Yeah.
Or something. And yeah, you'd use the C buttons left and right to move it left and right. And yeah, up to go to first person and down to zoom in and out.
Yeah.
Like tighter angle, wider angle. And I'm sure they just mapped those buttons to the right stick, and it still has like those predetermined angles, right?
I'm trying to think, but since it's not sticking out in my head, I kind of want to lean towards they made it so that it's smooth.
Huh.
But I'd have to pull it up
I know they improved it in
again.
Banjo-Tooie. They gave you complete control over the rotation instead of the preset like 45 degrees.
Yeah,
Okay, so would you like hold the button and
Yeah, you
it
would
just
hold the
move
button
until
and it
you
would
let go?
rotate
it just move on
smoothly.
its own. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And that now that I'm thinking about it, most 3D games you play today, and I guess most of them wouldn't necessarily be considered platformers because you're not necessarily walking from one platform and jumping to it. But similar games, that are in a 3D space like Tomb Raider, the camera just chases you. It's very rarely not directly behind the character, and that's just not something that was true of especially a lot of N64 platformers. And I guess that's probably because since you are doing a lot of difficult jumps from platform to platform, if the camera was just behind you, you wouldn't really be able
you'd
to
miss.
see how far you need to jump.
You'd miss a
Yeah.
lot.
Right. Which I was another tangent here. I was surprised how well that worked. And did either of y'all play Metroid Prime?
Yes.
There's a lot
Yes.
of jumping from platform to platform in
It's a
that.
first person
And
platformer. Like,
yeah, and
how does
it
that work?
Yeah.
and it was surprisingly not the most aggravating thing in the world. It
Yeah.
actually worked really
I
well.
thought you had a double
Yeah.
jump.
Yeah, yeah. So they found a way to make it a pleasant experience. Um, but I guess I hadn't really thought much about the fact that a lot of these traditional 3D platformers, the camera is not actually. It's probably rarely directly behind you because usually it's kind of high and you've got sort of like a 3/4 like
Almost
when
isometric.
yeah like
Mm.
Sonic 3D Blast or a game like that where the camera's up so that you can see everything around you. Well, anyway, we actually talked a lot more about this than I thought we would, considering that Nolan and I don't know the game quite as well as.
Well, then you guys have some homework to do. You need to beat the game. You like seriously. I challenge everyone who's listening. Go out because it's not hard to obtain these days, especially with the 360 and
Mm.
compatibility and all that. Like
Yeah.
go out and get the game and beat it. It's a really good game. You'll have fun. You'll laugh, and the ending is surprising. I'm gonna put it that way. It's the I when I let's played. I said this last week when I let's played it for Geeks and a Grace. The final episode went horrible because I could not beat the final boss easily, and it took me like 2 hours, and I scrapped it.
She
Oh
was
my gosh.
difficult though. I remember that. Like I remember that I beat this like a while ago. Like at my friend's house, we had one of those up all night playing
uh,
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
but I I don't think I even remember exactly what happened. I mean, I'm sure I could guess, but
Hmm.
because I just did this less than a year ago. It's so fresh in my mind. So
yeah.
it was surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
Uh,
About how long should it take, like a normal person going not 100%ing the
well,
game, but
going to
just going through it? And
howlongtobeat.com.
yeah, I was actually just headed there, and I think I want to make that part of a regular part of the show. So I'm actually going to look up a link to the past, and oh, I
Oh, okay. Wow, they have the website looked like something else. Sorry.
oh well, yeah,
I thought the same thing at first.
it looks like you have to log in now, which I've used the service before, so
Okay, now you just got to hit the search tab at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
oh, okay, so I don't have to log in.
Main story is 10 hours. Okay.
Yeah. So this was the first game that I ever tried to speedrun.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm any good at speedrunning, but I think the first time I played it to completion. I did it in about 12 hours. And it's saying 15 hours here on how long to beat. And then I played it again and did it about 10 hours. And I was like, well, I want to know, like, if I really tried, how long would it take me? And it was a little under 7 hours.
Oh, wow.
That was me just running as fast as I could, just remembering where everything was. And I did 100% in less than 7 hours. It was 6 something. I think I ended up deleting that file by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, needless to say, like, this is part of the reason why I beat the game 9 times.
So are there any, like, because I know in Super Mario 64 there's a lot of glitches and people have been able to beat it in like a matter of minutes.
I do when I speedrun a game, I do know out of bounds.
Yeah.
It's purist.
Right.
I'm sure there are glitches, but I just don't know any. So I don't like to use them.
Yeah. So and
that's cheating. Thank you.
Yes.
That is. I will agree with that. Yeah.
Word, LJ. And since we're talking about it and we didn't mention it last week, I just looked up A Link to the Past and it says 16 hours, and that
seems
sounds long to me.
Wow.
I've done it in less than that.
Yeah, I'm almost
not even
positive I beat that quicker than that, and I don't think I've ever just run through that game as quickly as I could either.
Yeah, like,
I spend time in it.
I don't think there's a Zelda game I've played that I haven't done 100%. Like,
yeah,
you have to.
Right.
At least at some point, yeah. I mean,
yeah. Now it says if you're gonna complete it, it's 19 hours.
What?
Which, yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, who's playing this game?
Yeah,
it's a bunch of noobs.
Maybe like my very first time when I'm very, very lost a lot. But
yeah,
I don't know. Now that I know the game, no way.
And that's another thing too. Is like that. It's like, yeah, okay, I know the game, so I know where to go for all that stuff. It's a lot easier, so it cuts it in half at least.
Right.
This is my buddy was playing it for the first time. He's on the second level. What was that? I can't remember what that one's called.
In A Link to the Past?
Yeah.
That's the Desert Palace. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah. Like in the light world, and like he's fighting the boss. I'm like, dude, why don't you have the ice rod? That'd be so much easier to fight this guy. He's like, no, it wouldn't. Like, you can't even get it yet. I'm like, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
It's right here. It's right here.
You just need bombs. Like,
that's right.
Yeah. He's like, oh. It's like, yeah. Don't question me on this.
Yeah. Oh, that actually made me think. Going back to Banjo-Kazooie, are there ways to like upgrade your character, or is it's like Mario 64? You're just this is how you are.
No, you learn new moves throughout the game. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. There's that mole guy.
Yeah, bottles. You have to collect notes and find his molehills.
Yeah.
And if you have enough notes, then he'll grant you the move.
Every time I play a game like that, I want to be like, dude, my sister got kidnapped, and you're gonna like hound me about notes? Seriously, just teach me the
move. you tell me I need to get this MacGuffin in order to be better. Come on.
It's the same way like you play Final Fantasy. Like, dude, you realize the world is ending, and you want to charge me for the sword? Come on.
That's a side quest.
Like,
oh, my daughter!
Like, I'll tell you what, I won't buy this sword, and we'll just die. How does that sound?
Everyone will know it's your fault.
Yep, I'm gonna right before the meteor hits the planet, I'm gonna make sure there's a giant billboard.
You're gonna go up to that merchant and point in the sky and be like, "This is your fault."
Oh, but then I guess if everyone just gave you everything, then there wouldn't be anything to play.
There would be no sense of progression. That was one of the things I didn't like about Super Mario 64. There wasn't much of a sense of progression. Like, you got the keys from beating Bowser, but still, like, it wasn't.
Yeah, and there's only 3 of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So unless you just go knock on the door every so often and it tells you don't have enough stars, you don't really have any sort of, hey, this is how far along you are happening, and you just kind of left to your own devices. Actually, we were talking about 100%ing a game. I think Mario 64 was probably the first game that I know for certain I did everything that there was to do. And to this day, I still, like, I couldn't unlike like in A Link to the Past, if you ask me about a certain dungeon, I can probably spit out what I would do. But Mario 64, I'd have to be sitting in front of it. But I know that when I enter the level and it gives me the clue, which is the title of the star that you're looking for. Oh, I remember that, and I can pretty much just go do
Yep.
it. And I imagine that Banjo Kazooie is very much like that for you, Joel, having beat it. Would you say
Yes.
9 times now?
I want to say it's like 9 times. I don't have an exact number, but yeah.
So is this the game that you've probably beat the most?
No. Super Mario World I've beaten more times than
Yeah.
any other game.
Uh-huh.
And it was always 100%. Get that little star next to my exit counter.
That Mario World is the one where like doesn't the title screen it says like 96.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
96 exits.
Yeah.
And you get a little star next to it.
Right. And most people just assumed that was a percentage. And so it would draw like I used to, and it used to drive me crazy. Like, what am I missing?
Where's the other 4%? Right?
Oh, well, anyway, unless you guys have anything to add, I think that's going to wrap it up.
Speaking of completionism,
Okay.
that's not a word.
It is now.
Yeah, I was going to say, yes, it is.
The great study of completionology. So, when you beat Banjo-Kazooie 100%, you do get a different ending.
Okay.
It actually tells you about secrets that are supposed to be in the game that you don't have access to, that are going to be in the sequel. So like when Banjo-Tooie comes out, you can do this thing, and so like there was the stop and swap feature that was supposed to be implemented, and they could never get it to work. You were supposed to start up Banjo-Tooie, okay, get to a certain point in the game, hold down the reset button, pull out the cartridge for Banjo-Tooie, crazy, insert the cartridge for Banjo-Kazooie, let go of the reset button, the game would boot up. Believe it or not, this is how it's supposed to work. The game would boot up, and the features would be unlocked in the old game.
Whoa.
And they could never get it to work.
Of course.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
All right. I mean,
so you can look up stop and swap. It's pretty interesting, like what they were trying to accomplish, and what they ended up doing in Banjo-Tooie was a total cop out, where like you collected items in that game, and the items are in that game and not in the previous game.
Right.
However, due to ROM hacker code people who are smarter than me, they were able to deconstruct the game and find out that those things were already built into the game, that you just had to punch in a secret code in the sandcastle to unlock them. And it's actually kind of a one-time unlock only for all 3 files on the game cartridge. And so even if you're starting a new file, everything's already unlocked after you punch in.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been afraid to do this on my cartridge. I want to keep it pure.
Yeah. That sounds like on the original PlayStation when you'd have multi-disc games.
Yeah.
And it would tell you, although if an N64 game told me to do all that stuff, I'm not sure I would believe it, even if it really worked.
Yeah,
I'd be like, how about no?
I feel like this is not true.
They wanted to do it, and they couldn't. Like with the N64 DD, it would have worked, but that never came out in the US.
Right.
Because there were only 12 games made in Japan or something like that.
There was this PC game that I played, and I don't remember. Like, I think it was called Deadlock or something, but it was a turn-based strategy game, and you could like make alliances with your enemies, and one of the opposing races during a conversation would give you a hint, and his hint was to press Control-Alt-Delete on the board. And I feel like if Banjo-Tooie had given me all that instructions, I'd have been like, why do I feel like you're encouraging me to mess up my N64?
Yeah, encouraging me to corrupt my save file. I don't believe you.
Anyway, if you're hearing this, that means that I didn't talk about this last week, but my plan when I had this idea was to record a few episodes and then present it to We're all a part of it to varying degrees. An online ministry called Geeks Under Grace, and my plan is to present like the first couple of episodes to the board and see if they wouldn't mind us branding it for Geeks Under Grace and publishing it that way. If for some reason they're not cool with it, and that's fine. You know, it's not like I'm gonna pout or anything. We'll just release it ourselves somehow and rebrand it and remove all mention of Geeks Under Grace. Haha. No.
I was gonna say, I mentioned them a lot.
Right. So no. So it's just that's the plan. So if you're hearing this, one of those two things happened, and hopefully the Geeks Under Grace route, because I would love for this to kind of be part of that. Also, if it goes that route, I suspect that we won't have to have paid for anything. But I don't actually know, and actually we might want to delete mention of money from this. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, so that's the plan. So if you're hearing this, you're hearing it one of those ways. I'm sure at one point, once we start publishing these, we'll have an email address so that you guys can write in and give us suggestions and give us your input and all that stuff. Hey, my PC's letting me know that my display driver has stopped. That's weird because I still have a display.
Interesting.
That's wonderful. Usually
So,
when I get that error, it just blue screen.
right. But anyway, so yeah, we'll set up an email and maybe a Twitter so that you can write us. Real quick, what should we talk about next week? We can include
Nolan,
that
do you have a
at the
game?
end of the episode. Yeah, Nolan.
Suggested Link
Do I have a
Past
game?
and I do Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah.
You got
So
one?
what do you want to play?
I don't know. Let me see. I feel like just going straight into Ocarina of Time, like right after we just did Link to the Past, would be too soon.
Yeah.
Let me think. What was another good one? I can go old school.
We could. You familiar with any Sega games? We could get off Nintendo consoles for.
That's what I was also. I was like trying to. I was like, let me see if I like think of Nintendo or like PS1.
Yeah.
Let me. I forget. Did it cut off at PS1 or did we have PS2 as well?
PS2 is the yeah. So.
Then I will say, go like Jack and Daxter series. I like that.
Okay.
Okay,
that's,
I need to go out and buy that now.
Yeah. Is that on PSN in any capacity? Like, can you download it for PS3? Or?
I know on PS3 they had an HD for
they did have
like
it.
the entirety of it.
On Vita.
Oh yeah, and Vita
Okay,
too.
okay, I've got a Vita, so I can.
You have You got one of those too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't play it very often. Like, okay,
Yeah, neither
literally the only games I own for it, I got through PS Plus. I have not spent a dime
Yeah,
on games for this.
Notice I got that. I got the special edition that I got it a week early.
Nice.
So I was like, because PSP was so legit and Vita had touchscreen and all that stuff. So I'm gonna get it early, and then I didn't like any of the games until indie stuff. But
Yeah, I got it when I got my PS4. I was like, well, there's this sort of like Wii U gamepad functionality that I'm missing out on. So, and of course I had PS Plus because I had it for PS3. So I thought, well, I have games for it sitting around. So if you're listening and you want to play along with us, the next episode, which, like I said, because we're recording a bunch all at once and then going to publish them, they'll probably be up relatively quickly after each other. So the next episode, we're going to play Jack and Daxter, which, as we just discussed, you can get for Vita, or if you have a PlayStation 2 laying around, you can probably pick it up on eBay for pretty cheap. I think GameStop just recently started selling older games again, so you might want to check.
Did they?
Yeah. So you might want to check a GameStop or one of the other. Like if you've got a local store.
retro.
Yeah,
game
I got
store,
one of those on eBay. It's like $7.
There you go.
PS2 version.
That sounds about right.
You can get a good game for cheap and bless some stranger on the internet with $7.
Mhm.
So there you go. All right, well, that's it. Thanks for
Mhm.
joining us for Original Gamers Cast, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Be good, humans.
Bye, everybody.